That felt way more exciting because it felt like a mark that other women could look to as an example of what they can do.
She did it. And if she did it, I can do it too. I'll fail, but I do believe I will get there if I never give up.
We went in and we renovated the units and we were just operating really efficiently. We gave investors back 40% of their invested capital in month 15, which was huge. And like part of the reason why I started the Multiply community is because I wanted to change the diversity. I've been really lucky since then to have found really amazing women that are like, oh, let me help you get through this instead of judging me for it. As a single mother, the fact that you can keep 2 children alive and healthy at the same time as you are executing on deals, and then you're putting out like educational content, you have a podcast, that's insane.
Let's talk about that. Road to $1 billion.
That was like a timing thing. That was the right time in the market, and we got in at the right time. People that troll you, they know you're good. That's why they're trolling you. They're there to distract you, and every minute and all the attention you give them is distracting you from what it is you're doing. Stop letting them do that. At that time, it was the largest deal we had done to date. And then like, that was hard because I always feel like as a woman in business, I have to be more reserved about like my family life. And like, quite frankly, I think that's bullshit. I hate it when I hear that. You're comparing your chapter 1 to my chapter 20. As a result, you're feeling smaller for it. Say, no. You have done this thing. And that's incredible because people that are high quality and high caliber will always see value in what you're doing. They just will.
Welcome everyone back to another episode of the Early Risers Morning Show. Today I am super excited, most excited I've ever been to record. Today we have Veena Jetti, who, if you guys follow me, I repost her stuff all the time. I've been following her for years. You probably do too. She is a badass woman in the real estate game. Over 1 billion assets under management in the fund she founded, Vibe Funds, and the founder of the Multify community, where she's helping people learn and achieve their dreams to be multifamily real estate investors. Veena, wow, like you are super, super impressive. And thank you so much for being on the show. How are you today?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here because I don't know if our audience knows this, but like I have a girl crush on you too. And so this is really cool for both of us, I think, right now, because we're finally connecting after so long.
Yes. You're a mother. I mean, the real estate, that speaks for itself. You're a beautiful woman and you carry yourself in a way that is really respectable and admirable. And honestly, when I first found out about you, I'm like, how? And I know probably everyone is like, how? How are you able to do all of this? You started investing in single family, right?
I did. So I did the thing that everybody does where they're like, oh, I watched HGTV. I could do flip or flop. This is so easy. I just buy a house for like $50,000 and I put $10,000 into it. And I'm going to sell it for $200,000 and make all this money.
Yes.
And then you actually get into it and you're like, oh, wait, this isn't actually how it works. But I did start in single family. And then there was a week where I bought 5 houses in 1 week. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so much. And I don't think that I can find enough deals that I even want to buy 5 a week. Never get to the scale that I want, which is why I needed to figure out how to get into commercial, which is when the beauty of multifamily really unlocked itself for me, because not only do you get the scale, but you still get the residential side, which is the part I loved. So it was really great being able to get the best of both worlds. And that's why I loved multifamily.
So I want to kind of marinate on that. So when you say you're buying single family, how did you even get to the point where you could buy 5 in a week? Like that sounds crazy. You're just getting like conventional loans, or what kind of, how did you get from I'm going to buy 1 house to like 5 in 1 week?
So initially, I started by buying just like 1 house at a time, and I would buy with conventional loans. And a lot of you, if you don't know this yet, you're going to learn this really quickly, that if you're putting conventional loans, have 9 in your name
Right.
before they stop lending to you, because that's like the Fannie and Freddie guidelines. So, and if you buy creative, then you can have Jillian homes in your name, and that's fine. But if you're specifically using conventional lending, you can't have more than 9, right? Or At least I didn't know a way to do it back then. Maybe there are ways now, but this was years ago. It's like over a decade ago. And so what happened then was I went to a local bank and I said, "Hey, local bank." And they're a small bank. They're like 120 million in deposits. So comparatively, it's like a relatively small bank, local neighborhood bank. And I said, "Hey, if I bring my business to you and I make you my depository institution, will you fund my deals for me?" And they said, "Well, what did you have in mind?" And we set up what's called a guidance line of credit, a GLOC. And basically, the way it functioned is I had like, it was kind of like a credit card that I could buy houses on as long as they fit a certain parameter, they would fund it within 24 hours. So it made me really competitive because they were funding me at like a 6% rate, and it was higher than what the interest rates were back then, but I could buy
Okay.
fast and I could go out and buy without having to worry about like, am I going to get approved? Is this going to be okay? Whatever. And so their guidance line of credit, they kept it in what's called a portfolio loan. So that means the bank doesn't repackage and sell it
Okay.
to Fannie or Freddie, so they can underwrite to different standards and metrics. And so they kept it in their own portfolio and they gave me like certain terms or rates. I don't know if it was actually 6%. It might have been a little bit less than that, but maybe it was around 6%. And so I paid a premium, but it was still less than hard money lenders. It gave me a long term loan product that was more favorable than hard money. And this was back before raise private money from investors. So I didn't actually even know that that was an option back then. And I'm probably glad I didn't, because had I known that, I might have stayed in single family longer than I actually ended up staying in it. But so I ended up getting a GLOC, local bank. I still have deposits with them. I still have loans with them to this day. And they really helped me get that to that week where I had 5 contracts accepted, and I knew I could fund them because of the guidance line of credit. But then I also got to the point where I was like, this isn't going to work for me long term. It's so draining to do everything on a single family basis.
Yes, 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 yes. That is crazy. And that's really smart. It is creative. And I think a lot of people wouldn't have even tried to go to a local bank. They would have kept doing hard money and ended up getting burnt out paying that. I love that. So you had the guidance line of credit and you're doing single family and you realized, okay, let me just do this same thing and buy multifamily. And you went and found your first multifamily building.
I wish it was like that, but it wasn't. It was not very sexy, but I actually had a friend who approached me and said, "Hey, we have a 200 unit deal in Dallas." And I happen to live in Dallas. So that was just fortuitous. And he said, "Do you want to partner with me on this?" And I was like, first, I was like, who's he talking to? Me? Right? Because I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. He's like, "Yeah, come partner with me." And he is the one that showed me some multifamily because he had done a bunch of deals before. And, I'm still good friends with him to this day. We're now healthy competitors. We haven't partnered on a deal in like 5 or 6 years now, but we're healthy competitors. We're actually investors into each other's funds. So
Cool.
I have money in his fund, he has money in my fund. So we're very much like collaborative,
You're like
but
hedging.
he's the one. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it is. Because people think it's so bizarre that we invested into each other's fund. But I'm like, no, it makes sense because I invest into my own deals, but I can't have all of my money invested in just our deals. It's too risky. And so I invest mostly in our own deals. And then some of it I invest with other operators or people I want to build relationships with. And so I invested into his fund and he invested in mine, and it's been great. And I've really enjoyed like our working relationship. And, it's just it's good to have other good operators in deals with you.
I mean, you must be an amazing operator just in the way you've grown. So I don't really know the time frame, but before he offered you the deal, were you being vocal like I'm looking for a big multifamily deal, or it just was random?
No, it was random. I did not know I was looking for multifamily. It wasn't until after we did that deal that I was like, oh, this is what I need to lean into. I didn't know that before.
So what did you bring to that deal that made him say, "Hey, Vina, come join and bring this to the table?
Yeah, so I had a lot of experience in real estate. So I grew up in a real estate family. I went to undergrad, my degrees in finance. Then I graduated and I worked at some of the largest institutional funds. My most recent corporate job was at Tishman Speyer,
Okay.
and I left there in 2012 to start investing for myself. So it's been some time since I've been in the corporate space, but back then I still had that institutional like pedigree, if you will. I also was able to raise capital. I'm local, so I was able to do more on the diligence side and actually like walking the asset, seeing the asset, making sure we were actually acquiring what we were. And then I handled like the taxes and the legal side because I'm really good with legal structure. So I handled a lot of the tax compliance and legal and a lot of investor relations as well. That was a big component. So I didn't know what I could bring to the table. I didn't know why he really wanted me to be his partner, to be honest. But now, obviously, with hindsight being 2020, I had a lot more value and I had a lot more transferable skills than I even realized when I was in the middle of that deal. But thankfully, he saw it in me before he went to someone else. And so, shout out to Joe for helping.
That's awesome. I love that. And so you're in that first deal, 200 units. Where were you at in that deal when you went for the next one? Or is that when you said, hey, let me start Vive Funds?
No, so I had a partnership back then with other partners that I don't partner with to like in today's environment. And so rolled out when my partners and I separated ways, I rolled out Vive Funds, and Vive Funds is just my sister and I because I wanted to maintain complete control over the company. And it's hard when you have partners who their vision or their strategy is not really fully in alignment with what you're doing. And so I ran into that problem and decided, like, I don't want to do that again. So now Vive Funds is my sister and I, we both co own it. And we JV partner with another company, Ellie Perlman, Blue Lake Capital, and we JV with her, which is a really great setup because we're essentially partners, but we run two separate companies and we're like night and day. The way that we approach business, the way we approach entrepreneurship, we are like completely different. Ever catch her in a room I showed you, but this is called, this is like, has like Biggie Smalls is on the wallpaper back here if you look closely. And I don't think you would ever catch her dead in an office with Biggie Smalls on the wall. She's like very corporate. She has like this beautiful office in LA, like high rise building, and like that is her style. And I love her for it, but I'm not going to wear like a full suit to work. I'm just not. I don't want to anymore. And so we stay as JV partners, which is great. And that really has been, I think, a secret to our success is she recognizes the values and the strengths that I bring, and I recognize and value the strengths she brings. And together, we just are a really good fit and we're very complementary to each other.
I know a lot of people that meet you probably think that there's rich dude behind your success.
Need a rich dude. Do you have one? I'm just kidding. I'm just
I
kidding.
mean, your husband now,
Yeah.
right? No.
Yeah, I'm married, happily married. I call him Rich. There's levels to this game. It's really funny because I'm married to an anesthesiologist. So he makes money. I mean, he does really well. We could live very comfortably off of his income. Enough for me, not because of the money, but because I wanted to control my own time. And I wanted to be able, I was going to say, I want to control my husband's time too, which sounds wrong, but actually, in my heart of hearts, I do want that too. But no, I wanted, so like in my mind, right? I was like, oh, we'll get to financial freedom. Then we can go to like Bora Bora and stay in like one of those over the water bungalows for like a month and it'll be amazing. And then I was like, oh, wait, logistically, this is hard because my husband also works and has his own practice and it's like a full-time gig, right? Or he works mostly full-time hours sometimes, I don't know, part-time, full-time, whatever. But you might be surprised to learn that you cannot do anesthesia remotely from Bora Bora. And so I was like, okay, I need to replace his income and add income so that we can do these like really nice things. Cause I didn't want to retire early and then be like budgeting to only go out to eat at Taco Bell. I wanted to live a nice life and also retire early and have my husband have the option of working or not. And so say that because most people, when they're like, "Oh, what do you do?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm in, private equity real estate, or I'm an investor, or I'm in real estate." They'll go, "Oh, you're a realtor." And I'm like, Not quite a realtor." And then they'll be like, "Oh, what does your husband do?" And I'll say, "Oh, he's an anesthesiologist." And they're like, "Oh my gosh, you're so lucky." And I always think that's like a weird comment for someone to make because I'm like, "Yeah, I am lucky because he's awesome. I didn't marry him because I need like free anesthesia for the rest of my life, right?" Like, it's not how people think about relationships. And so it's funny because I have a lot of people who a husband's like the breadwinner of our
Yeah, I'm
family.
sure.
And I like let them think that because they think like, "Oh, your kids are gonna grow up knowing that you guys whatever." It's kind of stupid, but my internal thought is like, yes, and that's okay because they don't really realize we have private equity money, and that's a different kind of money. So yes, there is a rich dude that me. No, he is not involved in our real estate deals. He does not participate in them. He probably couldn't even tell you where we own assets with any degree of certainty. So,
Let them know, Veena, because know this, and I love this about you. And like I said before we even started, like you're like my real estate role model. I'm a mom. Hey, I mean, like when I first heard of you, I'm like, how? And I know that's something people ask you all the time. When you
yeah,
started your family and you have this huge company, how did you
yeah.
do that?
Well, I feel like I'm not going to explain the mechanics of starting a family because we all know how that happens. I will say it was tough though because I delivered my girls on July. At that time, it was the largest deal we had done to date, and it was like a how much did we pay for it? $52 million deal on June 27th, 2019, and then like 2.5 weeks later, I delivered my twins. That was hard because I always feel like as a woman in business, we have to be a little bit more. I always felt like I had to be more reserved about like family life and like, oh, if or they know I'm pregnant, they're gonna think I'm slacking or I'm not gonna show up as much. And like, quite frankly, I think that's
It
bullshit.
is.
I'm sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to like
Fine.
cuss
Nope.
on here, but
Yep. Be you.
this is not like family friendly. But it is bullshit because I don't think my husband even once thought that he should hide the fact that I was expecting babies. And I don't think he ever once thought, like, oh, if I tell people I'm about to be a dad, they're going to think I'm like not dedicated or committed to my career. But I would guarantee that almost every woman who has ever become a new mom has probably thought that if they're in a workspace or a work environment. And I think that's a direct result of not having enough women at the top of companies where women feel like they can't give birth, like after growing a whole entire human inside of them. Like, that's just crazy to me. But I did feel that pressure. And so I would be, and I had really bad morning sickness because I had twins. So it was like extra, everything was like extra in my pregnancy. And I delivered them at 35 weeks. And the whole 35 weeks, I was morning sick on the floor in my bathroom, like puking into the toilet, like going on mute, puking and coming back and like just talking like
Are you
nothing was
serious?
happening. Oh yeah, it was crazy. And so I feel like I had to do certain things that I'm hoping, and like part of the reason why I started the Multify community is because I wanted to change the diversity that's at the top. Because when my daughters are in the world and they're going to find their place to wherever they're going next, I didn't want them I don't want them to feel like they can't show up authentically and lean into their power as a woman. And I've been really lucky since then to have found really amazing women that are partners and men that are like very supportive and like family oriented people
Yeah.
that are like, "Oh, let me help you get through this instead of judging me for it."
I love that. It's amazing when you have a team or people that work with you that know, how hard you work and how intentional you are in your time so that when you are really truly feeling sick, they would never put it off as like, oh, maybe it's not
question you.
even of the
Yeah.
month for her, like that, stuff like that can be
Yeah.
really frustrating. And the other part about being a woman in, the world of real estate and in the world of a male dominated industry, funny that I wanted to ask you about because I know you go through
Yeah.
it. How do you deal with like working with so many guys and they all want you? Because I'm sure it happened to you a lot.
Oh, yeah. I try to give off like I'm very happily married vibes.
Guys don't care,
I
they will be, like, trying to throw a hint, and as professional and as you are in I'm sure you get the little slide in comment here and there.
oh yeah, I have my fair share of inappropriate DMs. You know what I've started doing now? You actually should do this too. I highly recommend this. I just like unapologetically post it and I call them out on my page now and I tag them. So I'm like, if you, okay, so I'll give you a really good example. This actually just happened like 2 or 3 weeks ago. So I spoke at a conference where there was like 12 or 1500 investors and I was speaking about like I think the title of my presentation was like how I raised $375 million to turn on over $1 billion of assets or something like that, right? And it has like these two really big numbers and my social media team or the conferences, I don't remember whose, but one of our social media teams like cut and put together the montage of all the conference highlights or whatever, and it's like centered around my speech. And so I'm wearing like a short, like I have like a crop, still professional, but definitely a stage outfit, right? And I have a skirt, like this red skirt on. If you go to my Instagram profile, you can see the video I'm talking about. And this guy commented and he goes, the caption is something like how I transacted on over $1 billion or something like that. And he comments and he goes, and I'm sure the short skirt doesn't hurt or something like
Yeah.
that. Like, and the skirt doesn't hurt your cause or something like about my outfit. And so I took a screenshot and well, I responded back to him first and I said, first, okay, let me actually go back one more step. I clicked his name because I'm like, who is this person that has the audacity to say this on my post? So I click it and I see that like it's some multifamily investor who's just starting out, like he has not done deals yet. And he wants to be in the exact space that I'm in, and he wants to basically build the same company that I've built. So I said, $1 billion in transactions, and all you had to comment on was the length of my skirt. Shame on you. This is exactly why we need more women at the top. And I took a screenshot and then I shared it to my stories. And I said, don't be like this guy. Do better. Like, you have to show up better. You have to do better. And I tagged him on it. And of course, like a post like that is like fairly dramatic and controversial. And he had like 300 followers and I had like 30 something thousand, right? So like there's just like a platform disparity too. And so I share this with all my followers and I'm getting like this engagement, like more engagement than I've ever gotten on any post. And all these people are like, oh my gosh, this guy is crazy, whatever. And then he sends me this like really long apology letter. He's like, I'm so sorry. I really respect you and I want to do what you've done and I hope to learn a lot from you and like blah, 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 blah. And I was like, thank you for acknowledging and saying that. I'm not taking the post down, but thank you for saying it. And I left it up and, kind of like ran its course. But those things happen all the time. You just kind of ignore it after a while, but you should every now and then call people out because I think it sets a precedent for other people to behave better.
I love that. I agree. And I'm gonna start doing that with the weird aggressive comments or like people getting super angry when you don't respond and starting to like call you all these messed up names for females. And it's like you would never do this to an investor dude. You'd never ever do this to a
Nope.
guy. It's because I'm a woman. Something about being a woman makes some men, I won't say men, some men just immediately don't take you
Yes.
seriously, no matter what you've accomplished, no matter what you do on a daily basis, no matter, how serious you are. It's like, let me write her off. And you're right. It does make me, or probably a lot of other women, like super defensive, and then we watch how we show up, and we show up more aggressive and maybe not like ourselves because we don't want to be taken not
Mm-hmm.
seriously. So that's something that I've
Yep.
also struggled with. Like, I want to be me, I want to be fun, I want to be goofy on social media, but I'm already having a hard time getting taken seriously. So then I'll just be serious Toddy, and then no one ever gets to know, who I really am. Like,
Yeah.
now this year, like,
Yeah.
just be yourself. Who cares? At the end of the day, like, what I do, the deals I do, the people I help, that's what speaks for my investing and my wholesaling.
Yeah.
What people think is going to be what people think. And the bigger I get, it's going to get worse. Like,
Yeah.
we have a mutual troll, and I'm not
We do.
because the only reason they're
Do
trolling
not
is
say
because
the
they want the
name.
growth.
Yeah, do not say the name because I don't want to encourage that.
Yeah. So it's funny because when you're trying to do something positive, like, when you started making content on social media, when I started making content on social media, there's no like dollar value to that. It's not like you make 1,000 posts and you get paid anything. It's a labor of love because you know what you're doing is going to help people, help keep you accountable, and eventually you will grow a brand. You will be able to help more people and eventually make money, but not everyone starts out with that thought. What do you think about all of these trolls, and not even on women or
Yeah.
men, but people who want to invest, who want to be involved? And like, what advice do you have for people like that who are getting jealous and getting hateful instead of getting a business and actually
Yes.
running an investing business?
Okay, so I do think that there is a place for calling attention to some of the like gurus out there that don't have the experience that I think is necessary to teach someone, right? Like, I tell everybody in the multify community, I'm like, look, there's going to be a million people that tell you different things of what the right way to do multifamily is. The truth is, there's not a right way or a wrong way. There's different strategies, and some people are going to have better strategies than others. But there are a lot of people who make their money from selling you whatever course or whatever guruship or whatever. Fine, but you need to know that they have the transaction history to be able to teach you the thing. And it drives me nuts to see there are like a lot of, so in the multifamily space, I don't know any other women that have a community or any to multiply, because multiply is not a course, it's not a mentorship, I'm not a guru. It's literally a community that I'm just the catalyst of, or that I started the community. But the community consists of everybody that's in it. So it's not just the Veena show, right? So that's number one. But I see a lot of people in the multifamily space that, they go out and they're like, oh, well, I could market really well. And then they market and they have like some of the fundamentals, but they don't have the nuance behind actually doing a deal. Like, there was this guy who was teaching people illegal things. And when like you ask them about it, they're like, oh, I didn't know that it was illegal. And I'm like, yeah, because you just don't have the experience level. Like, it's not malicious, you're not trying to be hurtful or harmful, but you are, because you don't know what you don't know. And then it's like the blind leading the blind, right? Like, you're teaching people who know even less than you, and that's scary to me. So
Yes.
I always tell people in the multiply community, always, always, always ask questions, verify the background, the expertise. And like, I tell them, I'm like, and don't absolve me answering those questions, because you should be asking me these questions too,
Yes.
because you want to know if I have the experience. I'm telling you like what you see on social media, but ask me these questions directly and I'm going to answer them to you. And so I do think that some of these people who shine light on improper programs, teachings, guruships, whatever you want to call it, I do think they have a place. With that being said, I think that our mutual troll is, if I had to guess, I think that they probably were in one communities or one of these programs and probably didn't have a whole lot of success. And I think it's really telling when you show up as like real estate scams.com or whatever, and then like you show up as like at real estate scams and you don't have a name, you don't have your face, like you're not willing to stand behind your words.
Right.
Like it's kind of like cowardly lying a little bit, right? Like if you're so sure that you should be saying this and you think you're doing like a public service, then like name names. Say, tell us who you are. Tell us what your experience is to even question mine. And because it's one thing if like you are coming to me and you're asking me these questions and you're like, hey, Veena, this doesn't make sense, whatever. We can have like a very fruitful, productive conversation because there's just things you understand at a baseline by being in the game. Vice versa is true. And to me, Arlie doesn't have experience because the questions that they're asking are not actually like they're not questions that someone with a lot of like private equity or real estate experience would ask in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But look, I'm not really ashamed of my history and my track record. In fact, I'm really proud of it. So let's get on a live and like let's do an interview. Let's pull back the curtain. Ask me whatever you want live. Then you know it's like unfiltered. You know, I'm responding like from I can be genuine. I can my thought process. I can ask you clarifying questions to make sure I understand what you're asking. And then we can have a conversation about it. I'm totally open to that. But I think what you'll find will not do this.
Mm-hmm.
And look, if you are like running something that is not appropriate, then you deserve to be called out, right? Like by anybody, not just by a troll. I think the other thing I'll share is the best piece of advice I got about social media and creating social media content is from a friend of mine. Her name is Jessie Lee Ward. She passed away last year.
Mm.
Yeah, which was really tough because she was so young and she was such a beautiful soul. But she gave me this advice and I will never forget it. I still hear her in my mind all the time. And she said, Veena, people that troll you are not there to stop you. They know you're good. That's why they're trolling you. They know that they can't stop you because you're too good to stop. She said, they are there to distract you. And every minute
Mm-hmm.
and all the attention you give them is distracting you from what it is you're doing. Stop letting them do that. And I was like, whoosh, like mind blowing, right? Like what a mindset shift for me. And so after that, I really tried to stop like paying attention to it. I had some, and I asked her this at the heels of, I had a video that went like stupid viral, like 8 million views
Wow.
viral. And people were so mean on that thread. But of course, like you only see the negative comments.
Yeah.
And then I had an interaction with one of the trolls on there. And I mean, sometimes I like to be petty Jetty a little bit. And so I showed up and he's like, his name is like something like Atlanta Investor or something. And he's like talking about how stupid I am and like all this stuff. And I was like, oh, okay, so what do you do? And he's like, I'm a pretty big investor in Atlanta. And I'm like, oh, amazing. I love the Atlanta market. And look, I show up to every interaction with an abundant mindset. So I'm like, maybe this guy has like $10 billion of Atlanta real estate. I can learn from him. I can buy from him. You know, I'm like thinking all these things. I'm like, of course, anybody who has the audacity to say this must have like a really big stick. Otherwise, why would you say this? This man literally goes, yeah, I'm like a pretty big deal around here and I'm pretty proud of it. And I was like, okay, that's amazing. Tell me, like, what are you doing? Tell me the things like I want to learn from you. If you're much smarter than me, like you say you are, let me learn from you. And he goes, I have 20 doors in Atlanta. And I go, wow, that is really amazing because it is an accomplishment. Most Americans will never own 20 doors in their entire life. That's a big deal. And so I was like, this is really incredible. I love that you've done this. How are you going to scale up? Like, what's the next level? And he was like, I don't think you could understand the next level if I told it to you, like some variation of like, you're too stupid to understand. And so I'm like, who's going to tell him? Do I tell him that I own like at that time I owned like $400 million in Atlanta alone. And I was like, and I think it was like 1,000 doors in Atlanta. And I was like, okay, do I tell him? Like, how do I said, oh, Hetty Jetty. I was like, that is so amazing. I remember when I first started too. And I was like, 20 doors is nothing to sneeze at. But if you need help scaling up, let me know because I own about 400 million across 1,000 doors in Atlanta. Would love to share those properties with you. Happy to have you like drive them, whatever.
God.
And he starts like he doubles down, right? Because this guy's obviously an idiot. Doubles down and he's like, "Oh, this is just what people say because anyone can say anything on the internet." And I was like, "I'm glad you asked." And I responded back and I basically was like, "Listen, this comment that I'm following up with is actually not for the guy that is sparring with me here because this is like David versus Goliath. It would be asinine for me to get into a ring with him because like how can we even like compete like that? It's trying to take candy from a baby, right? Like it's
Yeah, you can't
not
compete where you can't compare.
exactly. It's like not a fair fight. And I'm not someone that wants to punch down. I don't. And so I was like, look, this comment is for all of the women and minorities that are reading this exchange and seeing like how negatively he's showing up in this moment. And it's unfortunate. And I hope he like gets to a mindset where he could like live in abundance instead of scarcity, but he's not there yet. And that's okay. I've taken that same journey myself. Here are the receipts for anyone who truly is curious and who wants to learn like how I did what. And then I named like all of the assets that we own. And I said, go look them up. You'll see, you can find out like which entity owns them. And you'll see if you keep going down the rabbit hole that I'm the owner and I co-own it with my JV partner. And that's just the real. And he stopped talking after that. But
Of course.
I just think it's a really good example of people showing up in scarcity on the internet or not really recognizing how they can grow from networking and leading with kindness and leading with value.
How unfortunate that two people that could have learned from you and changed their lives forever decided to be that person instead of be a good person.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
gosh, it's crazy to me that they don't even Google you before they do that. Like, come on.
to be fair, I never Google anybody. I'm like so bad about this. And I always forget that that's a thing that people do because I just never did it. And I'm like, oh, I need to start doing this more because who knows I'll find. But
You gotta start telling
yeah, I
them,
mean, you
Google
could
me
have Googled.
first.
Yeah, I'm like, you could have Googled me. You could have just taken the assumption. Like I took the assumption when he said this that maybe he does know more than me. And he probably does about a lot of things, quite frankly, but we'll never know now.
Let's talk about that road to a billion because that's not something you can skate over on a
Yeah.
podcast.
Yeah.
Crazy. And
Yeah.
minority woman, that's crazy in itself. Anybody, white man, a billion is crazy.
Yeah.
So the first apartment was 200 units. That's huge. I don't think anyone's like first
Yeah.
multifamily deal is usually that big.
No, and I didn't know that this was like weird at the time because I never done anything. I bought it for 15.9 million and we sold it 3 years and 3 months later for
Wow.
24 million, 24 and a half, something like that. 24 or 24 and a half million.
What did those 3.5 years look like to raise that value?
So okay, first let me start off by saying you're not buying 2 units in Dallas anymore at 15.9 million. So sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. A timing thing that was the right time in the market and what was going to end up being one of the hottest market, if not the hottest market in the country.
Nice.
So we got in at the right time. Obviously, we knew the fundamentals were great. We thought we were going to do really well there. We went in and we renovated these. I'd have to look back and see, but I think we spent about $6,000 to $7,000 per door, and we were getting like crazy $200, $300 rent bumps, and we were just operating really efficiently. Our expense ratio was fairly low. I think it was like in the low 40% that we were operating, and we did a supplemental on the deal, meaning added more debt to the deal once we had raised the value incrementally out of the gate. And in that, we pulled out equity and we gave investors back 40% of their invested capital
Wow.
in month 15, which was huge. Yeah, it really popped the IRSers. And so investors made a really good return. And that was the first deal. You had asked me earlier, and I don't think I ever answered when I started doing the next deal after that, but it was just a few months after that. So after we closed on it, we started on the next deal and then the next deal and then the next deal. And then, there have been points in my career where we've tried to do like 2 deals simultaneously. It's really tough to do. We've done it, but it's not ideal, at least for our investor base. It's much harder for us to do multiple deals simultaneously.
That's such good information. I'm looking at deals. Should I go 15 units or 100 units, and like why?
Okay, yes. And here's why that's the answer. The answer is yes, because if I tell somebody to go after like 70 units, which is usually the number I like as an initial out of the gate, they'll go, oh, I'll never get there. And then they'll quit. So if 15 units is like your gateway drug to getting to 100 doors, then yes, you should do that. Though, if I could rule everybody's actions and thoughts and mind, I would tell everybody to invest in at least 70 doors. The reason why is at 70 doors, you can justify the cost of like a full time staff, and property management becomes a lot easier. And with scale, it's actually easier to finance, believe it or not. And so, what I tell people is 30 doors roughly adds about $1 million of net worth. After the 30 doors, if you look at it from a perspective of, if I just partner with 2 other people, we can each add $1 million of net worth by going after 90 units, and you solve the problem that scale solves. And so I always like it when investors go for like 70, 75 doors or above, even if that means you partner. So maybe you're not taking the whole pie, but you're taking a smaller part of a larger pie.
And I'm sure between 2019 and now, the space, the competition has changed. If it has, how has it in your opinion?
Yeah. Well, I think one thing that's changed for us is we've moved into a different tier of competition. Because back when we were bidding on like $16 million, $20 million, $50 million assets, we weren't really competing with a lot of institutional funds. We were just competing with like syndication groups, maybe like a smallish family office. We were not competing with like Blackstone and Starwood, right? Now, assets like our last deal was 131.5 million.
Wow.
Now we're competing with Blackstone, Starwood, like that size of just behemoths in the industry. And so it makes it tougher. Our competitive edge is because we're small. We don't have as much red tape to cross, and we can execute pretty quickly. Like my Atlanta deals, like 2 of them we bought, and we were 21 days of due diligence, 21 days of financing, no extensions. And we put like $2 or $4 million hard on each deal. So we could compete really well on terms, even though we weren't the highest price. Now, a Starwood or a Blackstone, like they have investment committees, they have red tape they have to cross, they have portfolio balances that they have to maintain within their funds. So they just have more red tape to cross. So it's just a different type of competition that happens. And the pool is a lot smaller. And I say a lot smaller, and it's still pretty competitive at the top. Multifamily is usually in pretty high demand.
So why aren't you going after the 20 and the 40 million? When do you stop and say, okay, we only want to look at this big now, we're done with that?
So the reality is doing a $15 million deal is probably just as much work as doing a $100 million deal. The steps are still the same. You're just adding zeros to it. And so now we really prefer larger assets. The other thing about smaller assets is you are very sensitive to any change in any of the units on like a 100 unit asset versus a 400 unit asset. I just have more margin to work with and more levers I can pull on a larger asset. So I think you make that shift when you're confident that you can fund it, can operate it. Now, with that being said, we're now coming back into at a lower price point because a lot of groups that had done well during the bull run have kind of petered out, or they've shut down, or they're not acquiring, or they can't acquire as big of assets, or whatever it is, right? And so with that, there's less competition. We can be kind of like a big fish in a small pond on like a $50 million asset, and we can pick that up and close that super quick. But also with the interest rate environment, you're having to bring more equity to the deal than we used to have to. So on a $15 million deal 10 years ago, we had to bring maybe 5 million of equity to pay the down payment and the operational costs and the capital expenditures. Now on that same $15 million deal that I could bring 5 million to, I now have to bring like 7.5 or 8 million. And so on a $50 million deal, you maybe have to bring like 20 to 25 in equity, where years ago to operate and execute on the asset.
I love that. When you look at your team and your partnerships, what do you feel like you're the rock star at? And what do you let your sister do or let other people do?
The one, or actually, there's two areas I'm really, really good. I play other roles, but two areas I love and that I'm good at is legal and tax structure. And I don't do that myself, obviously. I work with, our securities attorney. Do you know Nick? Do you know Nick McGrew?
Name, I think I watched one of your lives too, where it might have been him on it, but you were giving a lot
Oh,
of
okay.
legal and tax strategy, and you were referring like, please, like you guys need to him.
Yes, because I'm a lawyer or an accountant. Yeah, so McGrew, he's based out of LA. He's phenomenal. So I interface with him a lot. In other words, I argue with him a lot, and that's part of my job, which I really love. And then I also work with Larry West, who's based out of Dallas, Precision Business Strategies, they're tax strategists. So I work with both of them for like structure to make sure that we're compliant with not just like the SEC, but the IRS and like all the people that want to have a hand in this, right? Like our blue sky filings and safe harbors, et cetera. So that's one big role I play. Another role I play and that I really enjoy is raising capital. So I handle a lot of our capital strategy equity but then I do a bunch of other things too, right? Like I'm on the due diligence side. I do a lot of the execution operational strategy. Ellie and I work really close together to overcome a lot of those hurdles. I actually am on some of our assets every month. I spend 2 days a month just performing operational duties, making
Oh, nice.
decisions, analysis, things like that.
Okay, so you're heavily
So,
involved.
yeah, we're owner operators. And so the way we're structured is it's Vive Funds and then Ellie's company, Blue Lake, and both of us JV on deals together, but we're the only two co-GPs. There's not like 85 GPs on the deal like you see in some deals.
That's crazy. I had no idea it was
So,
like
yeah.
that. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow, you're
Yeah. Thank
super
you.
impressive. I mean, I already knew that.
Thank you.
How was the road to a billion? Like, can you kind of like, if you can, like overview it for us? Like,
Yeah, it's funny because
probably
a lot
hard
of
to do
people want to
that.
like, I know they will, and a lot of people expect it to be like I had like my sights set on $1 billion, and then I sprinted there, and there was sweat. Oh, and then I got there, and it was like it actually wasn't really all that exciting, to be honest, because there was a lot of sacrifice and a lot of hard work along the way, and I kept learning things and getting better and better and better. And look, the reality is if you just do deals and you stay in business long enough, you eventually will get to $1 billion in asset value. Like it's just the nature of buying and selling deals. And so it was not like some cinematic moment that I can say, but I will say it actually wasn't as exciting as I thought it would be when we crossed that mark, because we crossed that mark last year with the deal I told you about, the $131.5 million deal. And it was actually less exciting than I thought it would be, because what happened instead that actually was really exciting for me was I found out after like months after we closed that yes, that deal took us over the $1 billion mark. It was the largest all woman led transaction in the country last year.
Really?
That was exciting for me. Yes.
That is awesome.
Yes. So that felt way more exciting because it felt like a mark that other women could look to as an example of what they can do too. And that was what was really the most exciting about that deal.
For real, like as a brown girl, thank you for creating the
Yeah.
space and being a person
Thank
that
you.
someone can look at and say, "Hey man, she did it." And if she did it, if I'm
I
serious
can
about
do
my
it.
life, if I'm intentional, and if I follow the right people and I get the right
Yeah.
information, most importantly,
Yes.
execute on that
Yes.
information, I can do it too. I don't want to say just because she did it, I can do it. There's a few billion people on the planet, and there's only one
Yes.
Veena, and not a lot of people have done it. And we have to like face the
Yeah.
reality. Not a lot of people will do it, and more than
No.
likely, statistically, I'll fail. But statistically, but I do truly 100,000 million percent believe I will get there if I never give up. And that's,
Yes.
even if it's 10K a month, 20K a month. And I remember you had this really good, I don't remember if it was a video or like just a post, but you said something and it was like, dang, I feel like she's talking to me right now. Cause you were like, if you're cool with 20K a month or 30K a month or whatever investing,
Yeah.
do it. Like, that's great. And you can have a really great life. Continue.
Yeah.
But if you want
Yeah.
more and you want more, then you need to get involved in multifamily. You need to get involved with this other side of real estate. And I was like, dude, she's
Yeah.
talking to me right now because wholesaling is awesome. Doing a flip is cool. Having a property here and there, some rentals, having some money coming in is cool. I have 2 kids. I'm a single mom. Life is good. I don't worry about
Oh,
money. Like, I'm so blessed. I'm so happy. But is this what I want? Do I want to be comfortable, or do I want to have an epic life where I did something so incredible? I impacted millions of people. I changed the world, and my kids get to see that and then go and do the same thing. Like, option 2 all day. And that
yes.
was one of those posts that was like, hey, remember, just because you're happy and you have some money and things are good now, don't forget what you have in your heart and what you were set out to do.
Yeah.
Something huge, not a happy, comfortable life. Yes, a happy, comfortable life where I get to raise my kids and have peace and have happiness, but an epic life where I do amazing things, where I change the world and be super.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of those wake up posts. Don't ever stop doing that, because
Oh, I
you
love
don't
that.
even know, like, on a daily basis, the things you put out there. For every troll, there's probably 50 women who are like
Thank you.
getting that wake up call, like feeling down about their life or wherever they're at. And they're like, wait, don't forget, there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and there's an opportunity, and there's a life out there that I can go get.
Yeah.
And we need those reminders
Yeah.
from real women. It's just so amazing what you do. I know, like,
Thank
I've
you. Well, but the real MVP is you're a single mom. Like, let me put some perspective on this for anybody who's listening, okay? Because people ask me, like you asked me earlier, like, how do you do it all? I don't. I have a very involved husband who is an excellent father to our children, and he's with them probably more in absolute hours. He's with them more than I am. I have 4 grandparents that live within walking distance. I have a nanny. I used to have an au pair that lived with me. I have a huge community of people around me. That's how I do it, especially my husband. Like, I don't think I don't think I'm capable of being a single mother. And so my husband's not allowed to divorce me or die.
You're funny. I didn't
But
expect
yeah,
you to be this funny. you're, you're so funny. And that was like, that's like the icing on the cake. What message do you
thank
want to
you.
leave people with? Like, I have a million questions I could ask you, but I might as well join Multify and really get this education. I
Come
need
hang out all
to get
the
to the
time.
next level and hang out with them. No, seriously.
I
Um,
love that. Okay, what I want to leave people with, I think, is actually something you said that sparked this thought for me, especially if there's women listening or anybody really. The amount of times I get off of a stage that I speak at and I have someone come up to me and I go, oh my gosh, what do you do? It's so nice to meet you. Because I'm a people person. I want to know everything about you. I'm like, okay, Teddy, start with the day you were born and don't leave out any detail. Like, that's the type of person I am, right? And so I'm like, okay, tell me, like, what do you do? And I'm like super pumped and excited. And then they go, well, I invest in single family. I'm just a single family investor. And I go, okay, that's amazing. Tell me, what are you buying? Where are you buying? What's your strategy? Where are you stuck? How can I help you? And they go, well, I've only bought 2 houses. And I'm like, and more often than not, it's women that say this.
yes.
Okay. And they'll go, I've only done this. I'm just that.
Yep.
And I hate it when I hear that because they are comparing their accomplishment to what I just told you that I've done. You're comparing your chapter 1 to my chapter 20. And as a result, you're feeling smaller for it. And nobody that is on chapter 20 is okay with someone in chapter 1 using it as a comparison, right? And so I always correct women more than men do this, but I always correct them and I say, no, 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 no. You have done this thing, and that's incredible because most people will never do that in their entire lives, and you've already done that thing, right? And so it's like recognizing your own value and recognizing your accomplishments and not making yourself smaller because you're in the presence of someone who's done more. Because if they do that with me, they're doing that with men that are getting off the stage. They're doing that in rooms where they should take up space. So, my advice to women is take up space and be proud of what you've done because it's all important regardless of whether you, even if you've never bought a deal and you're learning about investing, right? You listen to this podcast and now you know more about multifamily or more about investing than you knew before you started listening to this podcast. Those are accomplishments that most people will never ever ever be able to say. You're just in
Yes.
rooms where there are exceptional people, so it feels like it's not an accomplishment, but it is. And so celebrate that, take pride in that. I see men show up very differently where they go, yeah, I bought like 400 units and I led the deal and I did everything and I was amazing. And it's because of me that that deal happened and it was awesome. And I see a lot of men show up like this. And I'm like, oh, okay, tell me about your strategy. Like, what kind of cap rate did you project on exit? When they're like, I did everything in the deal. I'm like, great, then I'm going to ask you all the questions. Like, what about your post renovated rent assumption? Did you burn off loss to lease? And like, what was your sensitivity look for? And I'm asking them these really highly technical questions because if they did that, I want to learn from them. And many times they go, what? No, so my point is, and they've done studies on this. Men will apply for jobs that they're only 70% qualified to have, whereas women will wait till they're 100% qualified or overqualified to apply for the same job. So my advice to anybody, men and women,
She.
don't discount yourself. Yeah, don't discount yourself. Don't belittle your accomplishments. Say I'm loud, say I'm proud. If people don't cheer for you, those are not your people. They are not there for you. You can hug them and release them back into the world. You don't need that energy in your life. Be around people who are going to cheer you and remind you of your own value and what you are capable of, and that will pour that into you and breathe that into you. And be proud. Just show up, take up space, be unapologetic about it, and don't never shrink yourself to make someone else feel larger.
That was a word for me and a lot of women I'm sure that are watching this, but thank you so much. I do it
Yes.
unintentionally. I think I'm
Thank
just
you.
kind of like shy and timid anyway, and in a sense, and I go in these rooms where it's like, he exited a company for 2 billion and she's done this and I'm like, I'm like a baby in this room. This is crazy, but you're right. It's inspiring, and you also have to be proud of what you've done even if it's not as much, because it's crazy. Sometimes those people will look at me and be like, "Oh my gosh, you're incredible. You've done all that." And I'm like, "What are
Yeah,
you talking about? You exited a company for 2 billion. How am I?" But it doesn't matter what somebody's done. Great people still see greatness.
100%. Do you know how many houses I've bought as a single mother? Zero. I've never done that. And the fact that you can keep two children alive and healthy at the same time as you are executing on deals, and then you're putting out like educational content, you have a podcast, that's insane. Like, I don't know how you do that. And so people that are high quality and high caliber will always see value in what you're doing. They just will. And if they don't, release them back into the world. They can go find the person that they need to and be around that energy. They can eat, that just can't eat at your table.
Love it. Thank you so much, Veena. We'll definitely
You're
be having
welcome. Thank you.
follow-ups. Guys, you have to follow
Yes.
Veena on Instagram. If you don't,
Thank
if this is your first time finding out who she is, follow her on Instagram. Find her content out there because it'll change your life. It definitely changed mine, especially if you're
thank you.
feeling like, I want to do something bigger. Like, I like wholesaling, I like investing, I like single family, I like flipping, but I want to do more. I want to have bigger deals. I want to have bigger checks. If you feel like that, I feel like that. I know I
Yeah.
feel like that. Get with
Yeah.
Veena because her content and her community is a catalyst. So
Yes.
like, and I'm so excited to collaborate more with you and to
Thank
learn more
you.
from you.
Yes. I love it. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Have a great day.